Okay. Hello, and welcome to the Honey Tea Podcast. So, I think I just figured this out. I think I have an intro. So, I apologize if you're hearing the original intro I recorded and then we start the main chapter and you hear me say hello and welcome again. So, two welcomes to everyone, double welcomes, double loves. Thank you for listening. Let's see, we're a little bit behind. We are a few days behind, and I apologize. Um, Super busy weekend. I would have planned it differently if I had had the choice. Um, I have my motorcycle license, so super duper excited about that. Um, so that class was Saturday and Sunday morning, starting at like 7:15 until 1 ish, and then yesterday I had a class I signed up for like 12 months ago, and scheduling just had to bump it forward. So I now have a certification to practice Reiki. So that's what I did yesterday, which is a form of energy work. It came from Japan. It was a very nice class. I didn't know too much about it. It's very different than yoga, but there's similarities. So I understood, like, I was definitely with my tribe. Um, but I learned a lot about myself in that class yesterday. It was a pretty intimate class. Um, there were some interesting people. It was nice to connect with new people, to do something new. And now I can practice only on myself. For the first certificate, there's 3 levels. So for level 1, it's recommended that you only practice on yourself. But I mean, I could use some energy work all the time. So that was cool. But busy weekend, and then I worked, night shift bartending in there a couple of nights. I think just one night actually. So a little bit behind, but we're here. It's cooled off quite a bit, so I'll probably cut the grass in a little bit. Looking forward to being outside. I do have some super exciting news. It's like a more to come kind of um, announcement. So we're looking at August 12th. I will have a huge surprise on the show. I am super duper excited about it. So more details to come about that. So excited. Okay, so here we go. We're going to just jump right into it because I have I mean, it seems like a lot. I don't know. I can talk kind of fast sometimes. So I think what I'm going to do is kind of just see where it goes and give myself permission with the podcast content to still kind of check in, like how I'm doing now. Kind of tough to do when I'm just checking in with myself all the time. Um, but then focus a little bit on a woman through history that maybe could have got a little more press, maybe could have got a little more limelight. So that's what we're going to do today, and we'll just kind of see where things go. I don't know that you can comment on Spotify or Apple, whatever your platform is that you listen on, but I do have an Instagram handle, so you can message me there and just let me know what your feedback is if you would like to. Are you enjoying um, the what am I trying to say? The highlight of women, or do you want to stick more to just daily, like how we got through a week kind of stuff? Sorry, I'm literally having trouble talking. That's because I've only had 3 sips of coffee. Okay, here we go. The woman who brought Miss to women. Now that's Miss, capital M, lowercase s, period. So I didn't know much about her. So this was a real treat for me. Um, so she was born on May 8th, St. Louis, Missouri. She died June 22nd. She was born 1939 and she died in just 2017. So not that long ago. She basically demanded to be called Miss, like MS, because this is like a loose quote, but back in the day, and not that long ago, like we could probably talk to our grandmothers, older aunts, and they can tell you that society was very interested if you were married or not. That was like after they knew your name, that was the next thing they wanted to know about you as a woman because it was status. The patriarchy needs to know, uh, how can I belittle you? That's going down another rabbit hole. Sorry. So she was partially raised by her grandparents. And when I first read this, I thought it was like the parents were in a bad situation and maybe didn't make the best choices. But once I dug a little further, they actually traveled a lot for work. So she was partially raised by her grandparents, and then she went to live with her father at age 14. She was kicked out of college for staging a protest at age 19 for censorship of the college paper. Okay, we're still recording. So already, Sheila Michaels has this kind of feisty spirit. She's only in college and she's already like, I'm going to be at the forefront of a protest. Love her. Badass. So in 1961, so we're jumping forward a little bit, she moves in with Miss Mary Hamilton. So in 1961, we have Sheila Michaels, who happens to be a white woman. It's pertinent to the story. And then Mary Hamilton is a black woman. So we're at the height of the civil rights movement during this time. And this is kind of when the campaign for Miss began, according to Sheila Michaels. So Sheila Michaels is the white woman, Mary Hamilton is the black woman. Okay, and that'll all make sense in a few minutes. So Sheila Michaels is quoted as saying, Michael describes the campaign as a timid 8-year crusade. And she's referring to the campaign for Miss. Okay, and I think it's really interesting that even as kind of fiery as she may have been in her spirit, there was still a wet blanket over how much women could do, because if you did too much, I think she was really smart about doing it the way that she did, because if you pushed too much, then you would just be completely shut down. So doing it in a manner that really got the end result across, so intelligent. Just my opinion, and I don't know what her intentions were, but that came up as I was going over the notes. So in 1961, Sheila and Mary move in together. And I don't know. I was like, are they lesbians? Are they not? But once I dug a little further, I don't think they are. So Mary Hamilton was born in Iowa and grew up in Denver. She also was raised by her grandmother, and Hamilton's family was white passing. So if you're not familiar with that term, especially in the South, that was a big deal. So if you had lighter skin as a black person, then it was actually kind of pushed to be white passing because you would have more opportunity, you would be treated better, you would have access to maybe more jobs. So Mary Hamilton's family was white passing, but she didn't want any part of it. She was like owning herself, owning her roots, owning her skin, her melanin, and she was like, I am not going to be down with that bullshit. To each their own. I also read a book a long time ago, and they talked about bleaching the line. So down in the South, during slavery, the women would often intentionally allow white men to have sex with them to produce children to bleach their lines so their grandchildren might be white passing and have better opportunities. So it's just fucked up, not what the women were doing to bleach the line, but the fact that they had to. The fact that the selfishness and the greed of people put these humans that are just like us in this frame of mind that they need to do something like that. It's just so fucked up and just disgusting. And to be clear, it's not disgusting what the women were doing. It's disgusting that whether you're black or you're white or you're Japanese or you're Native American, women have been put in situations that are so fucked up for so long. And we're doing really well now, but there's still so much work to be done. So, again, that's a whole other rabbit hole. Let me focus on my notes. Um, so, Mary Hamilton wanted no parts of it. And she, hold on, I can't read my notes. She embraced her half Italian, half indigenous heritage. So this led to her dropping out of the University of Iowa and joining the civil rights movement. So her and Sheila Michaels they're in the right spot when they run into each other. They're supposed to be together. Now, to be clear, Sheila Michaels did not create or invent the salutation or title Miss, capital M, lowercase s, period. It has been around since 1901, and it was actually a term that was shortened from the term mistress. So, personally, every time I heard miss, I always felt like, and maybe that was just like my first experience with it, like how someone said it to me. And I don't remember who it was or where I was or even how old I was, but it had a negative, like, air to it. Like, oh, miss, with this like attitude about it. So I thought that was interesting when I read that it was adapted from the word mistress. So by the 1950s, it was used when conducting business, and the women's marital status was unknown. So this is how the two letters reached Sheila in her first year of friendship with Mary Hamilton. So there was a Marxist magazine addressed to Sheila Michaels' roommate, Mary Hamilton, and it had MS as the salutation. So at first, Sheila Michaels thought it was a typo. But then she digs a little bit more, and she was looking for like the missing R for like Mrs. So she describes the first thing anyone wanted to know about her was whether or not she was married, as was common practice um, to know about a woman's status. And her idea, and I may have already said this, but she was like, fuck them. Like, they don't need to know anything about me. And I love that idea that even in this still, um, very patriarchal, pressured society, she is not having it. Now, she's smart about it. She's not flying off the handle, but she's like, you don't need to know if I'm married or not. You don't need to know anything about me. So, um, I'm sorry, I cannot read my notes. Who called? Oh, another thing. So, I can't remember who it was, but I've talked to other friends of mine, like similar in age now. Not that long ago, a woman, even if she was married, could not open a bank account, credit card, um, without her husband's approval. And I think it was a nurse I was talking to recently. So she was maybe, if I'm 42, then she was maybe, we'll say 60 or older. And a very successful nurse, like all of these credentials. She's worked at huge hospitals. I think I was in a restaurant, I was talking to her. And she was telling me like she wanted to get out a credit card. And it's back in like, the 60s. They wouldn't let her without her husband's approval. Mind blown. So it's not that far off, and how far we've come so quickly. So Mary Hamilton was more focused on the civil rights affairs and encouraged her roommate to do the same. When Sheila set off to make the term Miss a term to precede unmarried women's first names. So Mary Hamilton is more like civil rights, and she's like, "Come on, let's do this." And Sheila Michaels is like, "No, I'm going to stick with this." So Sheila Michaels, fought timidly for Miss, MS. Okay, capital M, lowercase s. Hamilton fought hard for MISS, for capital MISS. And that's really important because during this time in history, especially in the South, the term Miss or Miss, however you want to spell it, was reserved for white women. Okay, so if you were a black man, you were not even called sir. You were a boy, no matter how old you were. So it was just another way to degrade black people, to emotionally put them down and fuck with their head. So degrading. So now Mary's in jail. She was not having any of the bullshit. So, like, Mary Hamilton was definitely, I don't know, I don't want to say more fiery, but she was not afraid of repercussions such as jail. So here we go. Miss Hamilton was once in a jail cell, and a Southern mayor visiting her called her Mary repeatedly. So calling someone by their first name was another way to degrade a black person. Um, so she's in the jail cell. The Southern mayor comes, and he refuses to call her Miss. He is calling her by her first name, which even in 2023, I think is kind of like, unless you know that person, unless they introduce themselves by their first name, and we're pretty lax now, but it's kind of rude. So she basically lost her shit in the best way and told him to go fuck himself if he didn't know how to talk to a lady, to get the fuck out of her cell. She demanded the cell be cleaned. However, the only request that was answered was that the jail cell was cleaned. So then she again, and I'm thinking that all of this is attached to civil rights. Like, I don't think she's in jail or in court for, you know, domestic violence against Sheila Michaels or something like that. So I'm assuming, it didn't say it in the research, but I'm assuming this is all as a result of her activism in the civil rights movement. So she is in trouble with the law again. There's lots of protests going on. Again, she's probably in front of a judge because of that. And she refused to answer the judge until he referred to her as Miss Hamilton. He would not call her Miss Hamilton and found her in contempt of court. What a badass. So she was fined $50 and thrown in jail. Following this, the NAACP took the case and appealed to the Supreme Court. Now, here's where it gets good. Approximately 12 months later, the court ruled in Hamilton's favor. So this is a huge deal right now because the Supreme Court is involved and they ruled in her favor. So this is a big turning point for this campaign for Miss. A little bit of the civil rights movement, yes, I think it's awesome that it was a black woman because it's bringing even more press to it. Just amazing. So now going over back to Sheila Michaels, she remained active in the civil rights movement and activism. In 1969, in a New York Times interview, Michaels made a point on air. By 1970, during the time of the Women's March for Equality, the title of Miss, MS, was seen and heard as a calling card for the movement. So whenever that kind of came up, it was like, boom, women's rights movement, women's rights, equality. When Gloria Steinman and Dorothy Pittman Hughes were thinking of a name for their magazine, they thought, what better name for Miss Magazine? Now, I didn't know about this. I've never heard about this magazine. I was talking to my best friend, and she brought it up when I told her about this episode that I'm doing. So I dug a little bit. The cover, amazing. An Indian goddess who I love, Kali, Kali. Um, she is definitely rocking the blue skin as she's often depicted. She has all the arms. I think if I remember correctly, it's like all the arms doing all the daily chore shit that mamas do, and some dads. So I'm not trying to like man bash at all. That's not what this is about, but we are focusing on women. So all the arms and the woman's doing all the things. And she's got a little baby in her belly, and the backdrop is black. Really, really, really cool cover. Fun fact, Miss Magazine first appeared in 1972 and it sold out in 8 days. Like, how cool is that? So, Michaels actually remained anonymous in the Miss movement and was only revealed years later. So, it sounds like Mary Hamilton kind of had more of her face and name in the papers, and Sheila Michaels did a little bit more behind the scenes, is what I'm thinking. I'm kind of using inference here, going back to like sixth grade literature class. I don't know. Um, but as life happened, more and more women began to opt for the title Miss, MS, or MISS. Okay. Now, during this time, Michaels went on to work as a taxi driver. She did run a Japanese restaurant. She married a chef, Hikaru Shiki, and unfortunately, they ran the restaurant together, but then later divorced. We will end with, I want to end with a quote by Sheila Michaels. It reads, most of the activists were women. All of the figureheads were men. Okay, we know that. It was the first time anyone had treated me as equal. End quote. So that quote brings up a lot of emotion. Like, it's getting kind of like, not like kind of tight in my chest, but clearly an intelligent woman, clearly valid because she's here, clearly an important person. And to hear someone say that, it's the first time anyone ever treated me as equal. You know, that it makes me kind of sad. So, um, I watched a video. I was trying to just kind of see if there were any cool interviews or videos of Sheila Michaels or Mary Hamilton out there. And I did come across one um, with Sheila Michaels, and it was crazy to me how, I don't know. I mean, it had to have been maybe in the 70s. No, she was older. Let's say 90s, right? And there's a man who's interviewing her, and he just keeps cutting her the fuck off. And I thought it was so funny just because of um, the particular topic, the particular thing that she's known for, and it's still so present in this video. Like, the ask a question, like he'll ask a question, and then as soon as she starts to talk, he just takes over and like answers his own fucking question, and is putting into her mouth what he thinks she would or should say. And I don't know about you, but as a woman, that's mansplaining, and it happens every day. And it's so fucking annoying. And I mean, it's not like a huge deal. For me, it's not like anything I'm going to lose sleep over, but we've all been a part of it as a woman, and it's so fucking annoying because that's just how some, and I preface and emphasize some men are. Okay, we're not here to man bash. But when they start it, it's like you can't tell them they're doing it because they don't even know they're doing it. And you just kind of like, yep, sure, yep, got it. And that's what she was doing. I just think it, even before the term like mansplaining was commonplace in this interview, I was just like, dude, shut the fuck up. It was so funny. So, anyhow, that's what we've got for today. Thank you so much for listening. The handle on Instagram, if you enjoyed this episode and similar content, my handle is Melissa Salazar Yoga. and that's on Instagram. So you can click on there and just leave me a comment if you um, enjoyed or didn't enjoy this episode. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. YouTube is the same handle. So I will upload the recording of this on YouTube as well. And it's also Melissa Salazar Yoga. So that's a wrap. Thanks. Bye.